Today's edition of Streeborama has been brought to you by our sponsors, Scares That Care. This is a real charity for horror fans and families in need. And Baths, the Back Alley film series, bringing Charlotte, the greater Charlotte area, the finest in cult horror, exploitation, action, foreign films, being released today. As a matter of fact, tomorrow night, or tonight, depending on when you see this video, or a few months ago, maybe even, they're playing Iron Sky in Charlotte at the Crown Point Theater, so that's going to be very cool. Hello, it's Strebo. Time for another edition of Streeborama. Brought you guys a pretty comprehensive Streeborama last time out, where I brought you up to date on everything that's been happening. There hasn't been a whole lot that's changed since then, you know, kind of just the status quo of continuing work in post-production, but at the same time also beginning pre-production on new projects, at least in the form of, from my point, from scripts. I mean, that's all I'm really doing at this point, is working up new ideas for scripts, which brings us to what should be a good bit of advice for some people today, which is, where do you get your ideas? And I'm going to give you an answer for it. So we're going to take a look at that from a couple different ways, see what we come up with. I've come up with a little formula that in a way reflects my own process, and hopefully you can take it and apply it to your own work, and it'll help you come up with ideas for that new script or story that you're working on. So let's get started. Like, when I was younger, like director Panos Cosmatos, I was forbade from watching horror films in my family. I couldn't watch violent and scary horror films. My mom actually told me it's because I used to have night terrors, which is something I totally forgot about. So when I was really young, I'd just wake up screaming like there was just something evil in the room or whatever. Scary shit. So she kept me away from horror films. That's funny how that all works. But I would always get influenced by the video store. I would walk up and down the aisles of the horror aisle. I mean, it's essentially what it was called, or science fiction or fantasy, but in this case we'll say the horror aisle, and look at the VHS boxes. And since I could never watch the movies, all I could do was really look at the covers, you know. Now, this isn't an R-rated one. I just grabbed a couple cool VHS that I had at hand to kind of show the way you can find inspiration for ideas in these kind of things. But Panos Cosmatos actually said his life was the same way, even though his dad, George Cosmatos, make sure I say his name properly, George P. Cosmatos, director of Tombstone and Cobra and so many other cool cult action films, wouldn't let him watch scary, violent horror films either. So he would make up his own stories from just looking at the covers, and I essentially did the exact same thing. So when we're faced with the question, where do you get your ideas from? You just get them from everywhere. You know, as a kid, I would look at the covers in the video store, and then I'd just go home and start drawing. You know, that was my way of telling stories, or playing with my action figures at the time, which I still have action figures now, though I don't have the ones that I grew up with, because somewhere along the way somebody told me it was immature to have them, or infantile, or what have you. So I gave them all away, or sold them, or maybe even burned some. But now I wish I had them all. Plus, they're worth a fortune. So coming up with ideas has never been a problem for me. I mean, I'm just one of those kind of creative individuals that I can just come up with ideas left and right. If you look at some of my favorite influences, you know, in the world of horror, the number one influence has to be Clive Barker. And you can see Pinhead right there on the poster behind me for Hellraiser 3. And in comic books, Jack Kirby, because the first comic books I really read were at the library and also at the school library. And they were digest-size collections of the classic Marvel stories. So it was the first issues of the Fantastic Four, the Incredible Hulk. There was also Spider-Man, but Fantastic Four was Jack Kirby. And I just remember those stories so vividly, and they were just so well told and so imaginative. Every issue you got to discover something new with it, because you had the Fantastic Four and the Mole Man in one issue, and eventually they brought in Doctor Doom, and then there was the Submariner. So you were continually discovering about this new world. So my influences have always been these guys that were just prolific creators that could just continuously create. And look at Jack Kirby. Who did he come up with? Captain America, essentially all of the Avengers, Iron Man, the Hulk, Thor, Ant-Man that's coming out soon, the X-Men. There's dispute whether or not he was the first guy to draw Spider-Man. Essentially, he did draw the cover, and Kirby claims that he was the first guy that drew Spider-Man. Though we all know Steve Ditko brought that world to life. But hopefully you get my point. So I've spent a lifetime learning how to defeat this monster, the blank page. That's the scariest thing that a creative individual will ever face, the blank page. That's something I think we can be proud of here at MVP, that we come up with original material, all new material. That's why I always support people that are coming up with new works. They're not just settling for doing like indie level remakes or what have you, or slight variations on something they've seen before. But as long as it's something new and original, and it has a real idea and a passion behind it, and hopefully some level of technical excellence in the craft, then I'll really get behind it. Like Patrick Ray's Nailbiter is a perfect example. Good story, excellent acting, great craft all the way through, and comes together really nicely. I think it would make a perfect double feature with The Descent. That would just make a great double feature, and you could show that to essentially any crowd, male or female. And that's always cool. I think that's cool to be able to cross all boundaries. So where do you come up with your ideas? Neil Gaiman's answer is that he just makes them up. Harlan Ellison's answer is a little more creative. He says that he orders them all from Schenectady, New York, if I can say that properly. Schenectady, New York. I don't know. Ironically, my family is from New York, but they moved south, which is why I'm from Mississippi, born and raised for the majority of my childhood, 14 years. So definitely product of the dirty, crazy South, because Mississippi is fucking crazy, I'll tell you that right now. Where do you get your ideas? Well, with me, I get them from everywhere. Like I said, as a kid, going to the video stores. Then I'd go home and write, draw, play with my action figures, make up whole new worlds. And I was weird like that. Like, I had G.I. Joes and Star Wars and stuff, but I generally didn't use them as G.I. Joe or the Star Wars characters. I made up my whole new characters with all of them and just told my own stories in my own little universe. I remember vividly at one point having all my Star Wars characters and making up like a sequel to the Star Wars trilogy, another story after Return of the Jedi. Yeah, that's how goofy my level of fandom goes. But as a kid, you play with your toys. But I made up this whole story, played it through with all my action figures. I actually had the Death Star playset, which was a major awesome piece back in the day. That was really my only really good one, the Death Star and Millennium Falcon. But I made up this whole sequel to the Return of the Jedi, essentially. And after that, I stopped playing with my Star Wars characters. That's the way it went, kind of. Make up something new. So what I do today, when I'm ready to begin work on a new project, I just start writing. I just sit down and start writing. Usually I use note cards. And I've mentioned before that you should always keep anything you write, anything, whether it's on a piece of toilet paper, because ideas are like handfuls of sand. They can slip away from you, so you have to capture them. And I have full, not only notebooks, but huge storage boxes of notes and ideas and from my whole life that hasn't been destroyed by other unforeseen means. I won't mention how, but it's important to keep all those things, because you never know, those ideas, you might never have it again. Especially, for example, like something from a dream. If you have an idea from a dream, if you don't write it down right away, this is something you should be able to relate to. It'll slip away from you, and you'll kind of forget all about it, even though when you woke up it was like the most significant, real thing in your world, and you were really living it and experiencing it. And then by lunchtime you forgot all about it. So just start writing. And I might find myself watching a movie, maybe even at the theater, or at home, and I'll just have an idea and I'll write it down on a note card. This is essentially what I try to do now, because it's easy to store note cards. And then, at some later point, I'll review that idea on that note card and see, does it need to be expanded upon? What is it? Is it a full story? Is it just an idea? Is it an idea for a full stories, or an idea for a scene or a moment? You have to figure out those differences, and then you start adding to it. And sometimes you come up with other ideas and you kind of group them all together, and they all kind of blend and gel together, and it becomes one thing that's greater than any of those one individual ideas. And at that point I graduate onto the notebook, which is when we start writing and doing character sketches. This is actually my notebook for Diamond Days. Oh, check that out. Dun dun dun. Werewolf Nazis. This is my notebook script for Diamond Age, which is where at this point you start writing your ideas all together and really start building the story, but you have to do it from the inside out, from the skeleton out. You really have to understand how it all works, how it all comes together. And at the same time, you want to capture the spontaneity and the vitality of new ideas. Of being 12 years old and coming home from the video store and just going into your room and drawing something just because you were driven to do it. No reason, no thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to grow up and be a great comic book artist, or I want to be a film director, but just you had to express yourself through it, and that's what it was. So this is how I hold on to that feeling, is you have to keep that childlike wonder, that interest, that burning desire to just kind of explore your world, explore the things beyond it, and explore, that's really something you see in stories, is it's something beyond your world, very much. So the first thing I do is figure out, well, kind of what genre am I working in, and if I can go from there, I'll say, okay, what subgenre? I'm going to give you two examples here. One is going to be horror related, and the other is going to be kung fu related. So just depends on what it is that you're doing. Now, I've blocked out time for the day. It's, say it's Saturday. I know I don't have to be at work. Personally, I'm not married, so I don't have any kind of obligations in that manner. I can just plan my day as I will. And the way I plan it is to lock myself into my studio and write. And so I put my note cards in front of me and my notebook in my other hand, and hopefully I have my computer nearby. I mean, not hopefully, I know I have my computer nearby, because there's plenty of them nearby. But figure out which way I'm going. Let's go kung fu first. Okay, so the first thing I start to do when I'm writing is I want to make sure I have an understanding of the history the genre that I'm working in. Just like Charles Edward Pogue said in my interview with him from Fright Night Film Fest 2011. He said, you have to know the history of your genre. Or the way he said it was genre. So, his French is probably much more correct than mine. So, here's what I do. I notebook in hand, pen in hand, put in a movie. And now the idea is not to necessarily watch the movie, but to let it kind of play in the background while I'm fishing for ideas, fishing for inspiration. So, I need something old and I need something new. We'll go right here. Something old and something new. Now, something old is something that I saw in my childhood. It has a nostalgic effect on me. Okay, so I'm literally trying to reach back and grab onto that nostalgia, and as I look through it, I ask myself, why does this appeal to me? What about this really hooked me? This example is actually Circle of Iron. Used to see this on Black Belt Theater all the time on Saturday. It was one of the coolest freaking movies ever, and it wasn't until years later that I realized that it was based on a story by Bruce Lee, called The Silent Flute, actually, which at one time, believe it or not, true believers, I was going to rewrite it and send that script to Brandon Lee before he was tragically killed. That was probably the first script I really wanted to write, believe it or not. But okay, here's something old. It's got the nostalgia on it, okay? But then I need something new. Now, something new is something I've never seen before. So here you go. I've never seen JCVD. I just grabbed this for a couple bucks at the pawn shop just a few weeks ago. So at some point, I might switch back and forth. I might put this in first, whatever. But the idea is that I'm not just stuck in the past. I'm also looking forward to the future. Here's something brand new. Haven't seen it yet. I've heard a lot of really good things about this, actually, and I want to watch it. So when I work on that Kung Fu movie, I guess I will. Okay, and then I want to go from the best to the worst. Okay, well, this is definitely the best. I mean, if you want to talk about Kung Fu fighting movies, whatever the genre is you want to call it, martial arts movies, here it is. Enter the Dragon. It's the single most influential one of all time. And you can go back and watch it right now and still be amazed by the fight scenes on it. Yeah, well. And the worst, okay? Mortal Kombat. And Mortal Kombat, I have to admit, it has a cheesy warm spot in my heart. I do like the first one. The second one is so bad. So bad. So again, I'm bouncing between the two of these. It's my 8-hour day to write, my 12-hour day to write, whatever. It's anything goes. So the whole time I'm trying to work on my story, trying to put my ideas together and say, okay, now what makes this so great? Again, it's just the same as the approach to the other things. What is it that in it that really works? What is it that makes it so timeless? That's why you want to go with the best. You don't want to just go with some that are okay. You want to go with the one that never fail. If you put it on, you won't be able to turn it off. That's how you know it's the best. The worst. Why did it fail? What's so bad about it? Why is it so cheesy? Why does it come across as cheesy when it had elements that seemed like it could have worked? Basically it all just comes down to the scripts for these. And horrible casting. Oh my god, the casting was so bad in these. The Mortal Kombat movies are a perfect example of gimmick movies. And the first one, it kind of worked because people, I don't know. They lucked into it backwards and kind of made a bad, fun action movie. Okay, but it's bad. It's bad. Even the fights aren't really very good. But for some reason, it's kind of cool. I like it. Second one, there's no excuse for it. So again, you're comparing what is it that works, what doesn't work. And again, you're keeping your own story in mind this whole time. Now, as you're doing this, you want to start, you're working out the structure to your story, and that's essentially a 3-act story, and you have to understand 3-act storytelling. If you don't, there's nothing that can be done for you. You need to Google that shit, go buy some books and read them. Again, that's something that should go without saying. But then there are other approaches you can also use, like Joseph Campbell's work with the hero's monomyth, and so many other approaches. I mean, there are a lot of really cool books on them nowadays too. I'll give you another example, just like a simple formula, like the Friday the 13th formula. Every 6 minutes they want to have somebody either A, getting killed, or have some boobs appear. That's a simple kind of formula you can apply to it. Now, the idea is you're not trying to make anything formulaic per se, but you're using those patterns as starting points, as touchstones to get things going as you build it up and change things around. But the whole idea is you want things to be new and original, and you want it to seem innovative, so you have to be willing to go in those kind of directions, come up with something new. Okay, the last two, you want something from a book and something out of the box. Okay, so something from a book. I'm doing my martial arts movie, my script, okay? So I dig out this book and I'm just flipping through it. I'm flipping through it because I'm really writing the whole time. I'm thinking, okay, who are the characters? I might come up with a little bit of backstory for the characters. I might do a character sketch, like the character sketches I showed you. I might do an idea web, which is kind of figuring out how the relations of them all, how they all link together, doing character sketches, just whatever it is. The idea is just start throwing things on the page and the story will come together and the script will come together. Secret Fighting Arts of the World. This is a really cool book about this guy, John F. Gilby, who travels the world and trains with all these esoteric masters. Like, the first chapter is the death touch. So what more do you need to know? There's a guy that headbutts people, a Mexican guy that cuts people with his fingers. What do you want me to say? It's very, very cool. But anyway, so that's from a book, part of studying my history. And then boom, something out of the box. You have to think in other ways. How do I go outside of the box? So here you go. I'm writing a martial arts book. So the Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi, the greatest samurai of all time. This is his treatise on the martial arts. I actually read this as a martial artist because what more do you need to know? I mean, the samurai was always willing to die, and they had attained that higher level of Zen thought where the mind and body and spirit and all those things are one. Kind of like what I'm talking to you about now, because you have to have a real understanding of oneself and your place and what you're supposed to be doing at any given time to be able to do this stuff. If you really want to be a filmmaker and a storyteller and have something that you want to put out to the world, you have to be in a for real place. You cannot be a pretender. You cannot be a faker, because at some point the walls are going to come down. Your feet will be revealed as clay. You have to be willing to go all the way and risk everything to accomplish everything. And one way to do that is by having that Zen focus through your entire life. It's not something where you just go, oh, hey, horror movies are popular today. Oh, hey, superhero movies are popular today. Oh, hey, science fiction movies are popular today. I'm going to make one. No. It's about 20 years of your life you've been drawn towards this stuff from one way or another, and you found yourself in a medium where you can express it back. And boom, there you go. It's understanding. So where do you get your ideas? You make them up. Make them up. That's the martial arts portion. Now I'm going to fly through the horror section a little bit quicker because this video is already going long. But I've already given you the formula. Old, new, best, worst, book, box. Okay? Just think about it. So here we go. Let's see. Again, I'm looking at my history. Old and new. Okay. Old and new for horror. Oh, this is zombie movies, actually. So I'm working on my zombie script, let's say. Wink, wink. Not that I'm working on one right now, but... something old. Day of the Dead. Now, this one doesn't have like a ton of nostalgic value for me beyond the cover. Though I do have the original one sheet back there. Check that out. Gift from my buddy Todd A. Britt. But that's legit. Because I watched this in my late teens, not my early teens. Like I said, I couldn't watch this stuff, but I always saw the cover. And I mean, you saw the TV commercials, or you heard the radio commercials back in the day. I mean, it was awesome when the commercials would play on the radio, because it was great. It was just, you get to hear about this crazy stuff that you weren't getting to see at the time. It made you really want to go see it. All right, something old and something new. Steve Niles' Remains. Haven't seen it yet. This is actually a screener that somebody sold. I bought it on eBay. So this is kind of a collectible version of it. It's got a little letter on there. And it actually says in the letter that this is an unfinished version. Rough cut with temporary color, music, and visual effects. So a little bit different. I haven't seen the version that played on Chiller yet. So new. Something old, something new. Again, because the principle is always looking towards the future, and people have to understand that. That's why I'm so down on people that want to use existing properties to try to build their own name to a certain extent. Now, and specifically I'm talking about fan films, and that's not what the genre needs. That's not what we need as fans, because those works already exist. They are fun to make, they are fun to watch, don't get me wrong, but it's not what we need to put our time and energy into, because those works already exist. They're already great because they are great. We don't need to quote unquote add to them, change them, whatever. We need to come up with something new. Something new. We have to constantly aim for that paradigm shifting impact. Okay, and I know it sounds assholish to talk like that, but fuck you if you don't dig it, because that's the wavelength I'm talking about in terms of what we as creators need to be doing. Okay, because if we don't have those higher aspirations at some point, we're just going to kind of settle for the middle, then what we're going to get is going to be something way down here. Way down here. Think about it. Okay. The best and the worst. Oh, did I get my shit out of order? Something old, something new? I have no idea. We'll go with the best and the worst. Day of the Dead, my all-time favorites. Worst, Resident Evil. Yeah. People always say I love everything I see. Not true. I hate the fucking Resident Evil movies. These are a blight upon the horror community, upon the Resident Evil games. They're just bullshit. But I know they have fans. And I just pissed somebody off. But that's why I don't dwell on bashing on shit too much. But best and the worst. Okay, why does Day of the Dead work? Why does Resident Evil not work? And it definitely doesn't work. And then something from a book and something outside of the box. Book in the box. The book, zombie movies. Again, my history. I'm working on my zombie script. I want to know my history. Outside of the box. Let's play a video game. It's got zombies in it. Put yourself in the situation. So, there you go. I think that'll about do it for this week's edition of Streeborama. I hope you enjoyed these tips that I've given you. Hopefully they'll help you do what you need to do to create your next script. So I say go, run with it, be fruitful and multiply. Come up with something new and exciting that will excite not only you, but also me and all the rest of our fellow fans, because that's what we need, something new and original. Go, run with it, make it happen. This is Strebo. Thanks for listening. As always, find us at mutantville.com. You can follow us on Twitter at MVP.
You're watching Mutant TV.